Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Saroy channel. I've got a lovely story for you this evening, which I really believe you're going to enjoy. And it comes all the way from British Columbia, from a lovely lady called Emma. And she tells us all about the Bigfoot at her window. So let's get started. Dear Sarah and listeners, my Bigfoot encounter happened in the early 80s in British Columbia in Canada, where I lived. Our beautiful wooden home was situated close to Lake Superior, and we had scenic views overlooking pine forests, which were simply breathtaking. For me personally, I particularly loved winter, where the ground was covered with white snow and the trees almost sparkled with white fairy dust. At this time of the year, it always looked like an idyllic winter wonderland. It was near Christmas, and the tree in our living room was ablaze with fairy lights, coloured Christmas baubles, tinsel, and colourful wooden decorations that my mother got all the way from Grindelwald in Germany. My mother and my two sisters, Paula, Anita, and I, were sitting around the cosy fire, roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories when it all happened. We heard the most enormous, mighty crash that sounded like a herd of stampeding elephants going through our living room. The noise vibrated, and then there was another almighty crash. "What was that?" said my mother. "It sounds like something big fell down, like a large tree or something." That sounded like a plausible explanation, I thought. There were some pretty hefty trees out there in our garden, but there was no real wind to speak of, so that was odd. Why would a tree fall down in calm weather like that on its own accord, I thought. "I'll go and see what's going on," I said. "Would you, my darling?" said my mother. Wrapped in my dressing gown and slippers, I ventured out into the garden, which was lit up by our light sensors the moment there was any movement. It was a freezing night, and the flakes of snow fell onto my gown like dainty pieces of white confetti. Everything seemed very quiet, still and undisturbed, and I could see no sign of a fallen tree anywhere. Then suddenly, for a moment, I thought I saw a moving dark shadow, and there it was on our rooftop, and it moved across the expanse of our large roof to where I was standing. Its bipedal form stood before me on a pair of thunder-sized legs, which supported an even more massive torso, which branched out into shoulders and arms of gargantuan proportions. The huge body was covered with dark black hair that was almost about 1.5 inches long. The face was long and human-like, with thin lips and a flat nose and a prominent brow ridge. Its eyes shone with an amber red glaze. I was horrified and felt almost as if I had been transported to a horror movie where I was witnessing some massive creature like the Incredible Hulk, ready to pounce on me and consume me for hors d'oeuvres, and then go and ravage the rest of my family for dinner and finally dessert. The odd thing was the creature stood still and studied me, and our eyes suddenly locked together. Try as I might, I could not turn away. It was as if he had completely hypnotized me. I felt as if he was boring into my very soul. Finally, he let go of the visual hold he had over me, but he still continued to stare at me while walking backwards on the roof with enormous strides, and then he just vanished from my sight. For a moment I stood there in silence while the snow continued to fall, and I absorbed the huge impact of what I had just seen. Returning into the house, I did not say a word, nor did I tell my family what I had seen, because in a way it was too unbelievable for me to grasp. How on earth would they ever believe me? It seemed best just to keep quiet, I thought. Anyway, the creature who and whatever it was had long since vanished. The next day I rose early in the morning to take my French bulldog, Juno, for a walk. I saw my friend's Rottweiler, who was very boisterous, come darting over to where Juno was, wagging his tail a little bit too enthusiastically. Juno found the welcome of this larger-than-life dog a little intimidating and let out a frightened yelp. Suddenly we heard this huge growling sound, which was like nothing I could describe. Ah! The Rottweiler's ears went back and his tail slipped in between his legs, and wincing he tore down the snow-laden street with lightning speed, almost as if an invisible force had throttled him violently. That is how terrified the poor dog looked. "OMG," said my friend. "What on God's earth was that? It sounded supernatural. Look at me. I'm shaking." I've never seen Bert behave like that before. Normally my dog's not afraid of anything. What do you think it was? The growling, I mean. "I don't know," I said, secretly thinking about last night's events and the strange creature I had just encountered. I could not help but wonder if he was the mysterious owner of the foreboding growl, but I was not going to say anything at the risk of sounding completely crazy. It must have been very early the following morning when I heard a tapping sound at my window, like someone was trying to get my attention. In the half-awake, half-asleep state I was in, I looked up at the large window that was facing my bed. I could see the face of the ape-man creature smudged against the window as he was staring at me. I got up, went to the window, pulled the curtains to block out the horrible face, and returned to my bed, pulling the covers over my head, and finally I drifted off into a deep sleep. When I awoke, I wondered if the horrible face at the window had indeed been a dream. It had felt so real, I thought. I went to investigate the area outside my window, and I could see a gargantuan footprint measuring 22 inches in the snow. OMG, I thought, my dream was real. The creature was really here. I wonder what he was doing and why he was looking through my window. It did make me feel as if I'd been stalked. Christmas was getting closer and everyone was getting very excited. We always had our family from far and wide, all over North America, come and stay with us in our beautiful home, which was full of laughter and happy chatter. For our family, it was simply the best time of the year. My mother returned from her grocery shopping and was bringing in the bags laden with food into the kitchen. "Be a dear," she said to me, "and get me the turkey from the car. It's the one in the box with the red ribbon on it." Obediently, I went to the car to retrieve the turkey, but it was gone, and so were the 2 larger bags of walnuts, a bag of assorted chocolates, a cooked ham, and a box of mince pies. My mother was furious. "Who could have taken them?" she said. "They were there almost a moment ago." Suddenly I knew in my heart who the perpetrator was, but I could not bring myself to tell my mother what I knew. "Oh, by the way, Mum, an ape-like creature looking like the Incredible Hulk stole your turkey." Number 1, I knew she wouldn't believe me, and number 2, I was scared she would think I'd gone stark raving mad. The day before Christmas, my mother asked me if I had something to tell her. She looked at me with a raised, cynical brow, and I could tell that she was not best pleased with me. "I know," she said. "I know what you've done, and I'm not happy." "What are you talking about?" I asked her. "I know that you ate the chocolate candies. I know that you ate the walnuts. And I know that you ate the mince pies. And I also know that you've been feeding your dog Juno all that Christmas turkey and ham. Darling, the dog is well overweight already. You're giving him turkey, and you're giving him a turkey that feeds at least 15 people. Is that not ever so slightly over the top?" "What are you talking about, Mum?" I asked. "I saw all those empty sweet wrappers and the empty nut bags hiding outside your window under the snow. I also caught your dog Juno outside the window eating a whole turkey drumstick. I tried to get it from him, but he growled at me and ran away." "You're teaching that dog to behave very badly, Emma, and you're spoiling him rotten. He can eat his dog food, can't he? Not expensive turkey and ham, which was, by the way, meant for all my guests." "What do you have to say for yourself, Emma?" My father also looked at me with a stern look on his face. Emma, why would you do something like that? Sorry, Mum. Sorry, Dad, I said, looking as guilty as hell and feeling it too. I just could not bring myself to tell my mother about the monster that I now know to be a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. I knew they would think I was telling porkies to explain all the stolen food stuff. Anyway, Christmas came and went that year, and I was the butt of everyone's joke, as my mother announced that the first turkey had been given to Juno, my French bulldog, and that I had stuffed all the Christmas mince pies, chocolates and walnuts down my face. "Ah, it's lucky she doesn't put on weight," remarked one of my aunts. Anyway, shortly after Christmas, I flew to Edinburgh in Scotland because I had to start a degree in art history. So I was away from my home in British Columbia for a while. I never saw the hairy man again, but I know he's still out there. He's probably stealing somebody else's Christmas turkey this year. Looking back, I think he may have had a weird kind of crush on me. Then again, I could be wrong. He did feed turkey to my dog, and he defended my dog from the Rottweiler with that fearsome growl. Even today, I'm teased mercilessly about feeding my French bulldog a whole turkey at Christmas. But you and I know better. I also know that Bigfoots are real because I saw the hairy man myself. I don't care whether you believe my story or not. I know it to be true. Thank you, Emma, for such a lovely story. Until next time, good night.